Chapter 31. Richard did not want a third child. He had made it very clear that 2 was his limit. The nightmare that had begun our marriage turned worse with the news of my 3rd pregnancy. Money was as tight as always. I returned to the bookstore and increased my hours. While pregnant, I was pulling 40 hours a week in the stockroom and mothering 2 children besides. I wasn't slowing down, and 6 months in, I fell off a ladder. My 3rd pregnancy was different than the other 2. First, Richard and I were always fighting. It was habitual now. He disowned Lind right off. He often accused me of cheating and insisted she belonged to the neighbor. When he saw how upset I was about that accusation, he insisted it had been a joke, but repeated the same line of humor a week later. Now that I think about it, I think Richard ruined me for humor. His jokes were always made at the expense of others, usually me. They were hurtful and shallow. He may have been joking about Lynn belonging to the neighbor. To this day, he swears he was. I found no humor in it. After I fell off the ladder, my pregnancy with Lynn became high risk and I was bleeding. I was sentenced to bed rest for the rest of the pregnancy, which only put more financial strain on the marriage. Finances were hell. Richard didn't want to pay any of the bills, and he left that for me to do. I took care of it, but then he would make purchases assuming I didn't pay bills. I knew how much we had in the accounts because I paid the bills, but not knowing he had made additional purchases, I made purchases, and together we balanced our bank accounts. For a 3rd time, I begged Richard to stay in the birthing room with me, but this time I didn't care. We agreed to tie my tubes, and this required a non-Catholic hospital. My cousin worked at the hospital where Lynn was born. I didn't think Richard was even in the room. He may have been, I don't remember. What I remember is my cousin and the needle in my back. I was alone. I was good with alone. I knew what to do with alone. They laid my head back, and the anesthesiologist rested my head in his hand. He brushed the hair from my face, and I laid there while the doctor cut and pulled me open for yet a 3rd time. I looked around the room and focused on an item reflected in the stainless steel cupboard of the OR. It took me a moment before I realized I was looking at my own intestines piled next to my body. I gazed in awe at my own guts. After a while, I laid my head back down and relaxed in the hands of the anesthesiologist. I closed my eyes and smiled as he brushed his fingers over my cheek. I didn't know this person. I have no idea who he was. He spoke to me, called me Angel. His words, his voice, his hands cradling my head. Never had I been touched so intimately in all my life. They lifted Lynn out of me, and for the first time in several months I could take a deep breath and fully expand my lungs. I gasped with a sudden rush of air, joyous air. "Are you okay?" he asked me. His voice was like warm rain. "Yes," I breathed deep, enjoying the delicious air. "I can breathe." He caressed my face. I gasped and he brushed my cheek. He ran his fingers through my hair. "You're okay, Angel. You're okay." I nestled my head into his hand and closed my eyes, relishing his hand on my face. In that brief moment, whoever he was, I loved him. I imagined him kissing my cheek. I imagined him holding me, grazing his lips over my brow. I imagined it was his daughter they lifted out of me. I wondered what kind of husband he would be. A tear slipped from my eye and he hushed me. He wiped the tear from my eye. "You're all right. It's okay, Angel. Just relax." And for the first time in my life, I did. I pushed the tears from my cheek and turned to William. Whoever he was, I loved him swiftly. To this day, when I think of him, I cry. I don't even know his name, his voice, only his touch. He was the first to ever touch me like that. His voice, his words, his touch. He stole my heart. I was with him for 30, maybe 40 minutes, and I will love for the rest of my life.